Hello friends, I am Dr. Harbans Lal. As you all know, I am contesting for the post of Vice President AIUS. During the course of conversation with my friends and supporters, I realized many of them are advising and guiding their family and friends due to overstressed healthcare system. My team, comprising of Dr. Ikeda Lal and Dr. Tinku Bali Razdan, will discuss with the experts to bring to you Beat the COVID series of short videos to clear all your doubts and to give you authentic, precise, and brief knowledge.
Hello, respected seniors and my dear friends. I, Dr. Ikeda Lal, welcome you all to this series on Beat the COVID. Today, we are happy to have with us my dear friend and an expert on COVID, Dr. Jumana Hussain. She did her MD Medicine from Kasturba Medical College, Manipal. After her training, she worked at Apollo Institute of Medical Sciences and Research. Currently, she is an assistant professor at Nizam's Institute of Medical Sciences in Hyderabad, where she is an integral part of their COVID managing team. She is on risk of exposure and COVID treatment guidelines committee. A very warm welcome to you, Jumana, and thank you for being with us here today.
Hi, Keda. Thanks for the opportunity.
We all know that steroids can be life-saving drugs in COVID. So today, let's discuss with our expert, Dr. Jumana, what are the indications for starting steroids in COVID patients?
So, according to the guidelines that we have been following at the Nizam's Institute, there are very specific indications for starting steroids. And just to simplify, I'm going to say that one of them is hypoxia, and the other is if the patient has any red flag signs. These things should raise a red flag for you as well. So, if their heart rate is more than 100, if they have fever persisting for more than 5 days, if their neutrophil lymphocyte ratio is more than 3.5, or if they have a desaturation, that is an oxygen drop of more than 3% or drop to less than 94% on the 6-minute walk test. And the last one I'm going to say is if there are any raised inflammatory markers. So these are the red flags that we have to watch for: a resting tachycardia, persistent fever more than 5 days, a neutrophil lymphocyte ratio more than 3.5, a desaturation on the 6-minute walk test, and elevated inflammatory markers. So these are your indications for starting steroids. And hypoxia. Of course, a hypoxic patient is going to be managed in the hospital. But yes, if a patient does report hypoxia to you, you can immediately start the steroid before they get to the hospital. That will definitely help them. So what are the steroids that we use? Most commonly now, the steroids that are being used are dexamethasone and methylprednisolone. They're both equally effective, but most of the studies have been carried out on dexamethasone, and that has been found to be really effective. It's a lower dose, and it's a longer acting, and it has less hyperglycemia as a side effect. So we start with a dose of 6 milligrams to be given once a day. This is a tablet, dexamethasone, 6 milligrams to be given once in the morning after a meal. And it can be titrated upwards. The equivalent dose of that is methylprednisolone, 32 milligrams, which can be given again once in the morning. But methylprednisolone has a shorter duration of action, so we usually have to give it twice a day. So if you're giving 6 milligrams of dexamethasone and the equivalent of that is 32 of methylpred, we split it into a 16 milligrams in the morning and a 16 milligrams in the evening. So that's what has to be done. And now, when would you want to convert this to an IV or a parenteral steroid? The same thing is when the patient has hypoxia. So a hypoxic patient must get an IV steroid, and once that IV steroid is started, they must also get an anticoagulant.
Can we, if the bed is not available, or we want to step up the oral steroids, so say if the patient is on 6 milligram OD of dexamethasone or equivalent of 32 milligram methylprednisolone, and we still feel the patient is desaturating in spite of being on oxygen, is it wise to step up the dosage? Can we make it 6 milligram BD of dexamethasone or 32 milligram, 64 milligrams of methylprednisolone?
Yes, yes. So with dexamethasone, because it's a longer acting thing, you can just step up the morning dose. So it goes up in increments of 2 milligrams. You can make it 6, 8, 10, 12, like that. Whereas with methylprednisolone, it goes up in multiples of 8. But remember that methylprednisolone, preferably, you give it twice a day. Dexamethasone, once you get to 12 milligrams in the morning, then yes, maybe you can think about making it twice a day. But at this point, you really should be thinking about admitting this patient to a hospital.
And Jumana, how do we taper the steroids in COVID? How do you monitor, and how long do these patients need to be on these steroids? Because as we all know, some patients might have an increased blood sugar level on steroids. So how do we titrate the dosage, and how do we decide when to start tapering? I think another important question.
That's a very good question. So, for the, patients that have these red flag signs, once we start the steroids, we don't want to give them for too long. That is the ultimate goal. Like, we just want to give it for a very short period and stop them. So that would ideally be about 5 days. And, you hope that the patient returns to normal with those 5 days of steroids. So giving those steroids for that much time is really not at all harmful to the patient. It doesn't cause any side effects. It won't cause any adrenal insufficiency if you stop suddenly. So in those 5 days, if your patient has recovered almost to normal, you can stop the steroids without having to taper at all after 5 days. But if you have given for longer than 5 days, more than a week, the patient has taken for quite some time, then I would advise, a rapid taper. So if you're giving, say, for example, if you've reached 12 milligrams of dexamethasone, ask them to reduce it by 2 milligrams to 10 for about 2 or 3 days, then reduce it another 2 milligrams for another 2 or 3 days, and so on and so forth till you stop it completely. And the same with methylprednisolone. If you're giving up to, say, 40 twice a day, make it 32 twice a day, then 16 twice a day, then 8 twice a day, then 4 twice a day, 4 once a day. This is assuming that the patient recovers. Now, if the patient continues to be hypoxic, then, the steroids will continue like that. And as their oxygen requirement comes down, only then you think about stepping down the steroid. So that these are the kind of patients who will require prolonged steroid therapy, for 3 weeks up to a month, and they will definitely be admitted. And of course, then the primary physician will take care of that kind of tapering. But remember, if you're giving it just for 5 days, then tapering is not even a question.
Okay. So yeah, that clears up a lot of doubts regarding steroids for us. So you mentioned that whenever we take start IV steroids, we must start anticoagulants. So let's discuss a little bit more about the role of anticoagulation and what are the specific indications which patients need anticoagulation treatment.
So so when you have COVID, your chance of developing any kind of thrombosis goes up, quite significantly. And this is more true for patients that have comorbidities. So patients with the diabetes, hypertension, coronary artery disease, these patients will definitely, even if they have a mild illness, they must be started on some sort of anticoagulant. The second indication is as soon as the patient develops pneumonia. So even if they are, not too symptomatic, if they have a patch on the X-ray, or if their CT scan reveals that, there's some ground glassing opacities, even if they don't have a low oxygen level, they become candidates for anticoagulation, because the kind of inflammation that's going on in the lungs predisposes them to a lot of micro, thrombi, and they need to be on some anticoagulant to prevent the progression of the disease. So any patient with pneumonia, and then once, of course, they have hypoxia, they definitely have to be on some kind of anticoagulant. Another indication for starting an anticoagulant is having an elevated D-dimer, especially when the D-dimer is rising. So if you get one abnormal value of a D-dimer, that doesn't necessarily mean you jump in and start an anticoagulant. You can wait 2 days, repeat the D-dimer, and if it has gone up, significantly, then yes, I would consider starting some kind of anticoagulant for this patient.
Yeah, let's talk about the different anticoagulants that we have, and when would you like to start the oral anticoagulation, and then again, what are the indications where we need to give parenteral dosage for anticoagulants?
Yes. Okay. So let's keep it simple. Ideally, of course, a low molecular weight heparin given subcutaneously is the drug of choice, because it's extremely safe. It doesn't require any monitoring. The risk of bleeding is very low. Enoxaparin, which we prescribe usually. So we start with 0.4 ml subcutaneously once a day. So this is known as a prophylactic dose. Now, if you see that the D-dimers are going up or the patient is requiring more oxygen, this can be converted to a BD dose. And yeah, I just want to mention that if the patient is heavier, than about 50, 60 kgs, this dose can be stepped up to 0.6 ml subcutaneously OD. And again, as I mentioned, if the D dimer is going up or if the oxygen requirement is going up, it can be converted to a BD dose, but that will usually be in hospitalized patients. This OD dose is for your mild disease home quarantined patients. Now, if they're not able to take the subcutaneous injection at home, an oral anticoagulant is fine. And so I think the easiest one to use and the safest one to use would be apixaban. That would usually we prescribe it at about 2.5 milligrams to be taken twice a day, or even 5 milligrams OD is fine. Again, if this patient is a little bit overweight, you can even go up to 10 milligrams once a day. And of course, you must always tell your patients that you are giving them a blood thinner, and so that if they develop any bleeding manifestations or they start to develop a bit of bruising, to stop the drug immediately and to contact you.
All right. So how long do we need to give the anticoagulants for? Is it as long as the D dimer doesn't start coming down? Do you keep watching, looking at D dimer values, and then decide, okay, then I can stop it, or is there a duration? Once they become asymptomatic is one question that I have in mind to ask you. And also, what are the investigations that we need to send once we start an anticoagulant for a patient? What are the blood parameters that we need to look out for, and how often should we keep monitoring these?
Right. So, Ikeda, once a patient develops pneumonia, once they have pneumonia in the lungs, that means that at least for 2 weeks, they need to be on some sort of an anticoagulation. Okay. Now, what would be or for a patient who is with a comorbidity, if you have prescribed it because they have a comorbidity and they are at home isolating, I would recommend that they take it till the period of their recovery. Now, this is assuming that D dimers have remained normal throughout. If D dimers are high and they're going up, then of course you are not going to stop the anticoagulation. You will have to continue. Once the D dimer shows that it is coming down, it's a downward trend, and the patient has completed their isolation, or they seem to be clinically stable and they have recovered, the anticoagulation can be stopped. In certain situations, patients are at higher risk for thrombosis. Like, for example, they have a stent, or they have some immobility, or they are, on oral contraceptive pills, or they have some sort of a malignancy, which predisposes their blood to hypercoagulability. In those cases, you will have to individualize and discuss with their primary physician, and those patients may require prolonged anticoagulation. But otherwise, I think 2 weeks is fine if the D dimers are normal. Otherwise, you track it with the D dimer. Once the D dimer starts coming down and the patient has recovered, the anticoagulation can be stopped. And the other question you asked me was about the monitoring, right? Investigation. So for these particular ones, like when patients are on things like warfarin and acetrom, a PT INR, or when the patient is on normal heparin, the APTT would have to be monitored. But in this case, with low molecular weight heparin and with apixaban, and there's no investigation that has to be done. The only thing that we are monitoring is the D dimer to see whether it is going up.
Okay. All right. So that was a very, very informative session for me. And I, at least for one, learned a lot about all these indications, because we've been hearing so much about the drugs. And a lot of times when a patient comes to the hospital, and even now ophthalmologists are being posted in the emergency duties, after 5 days of illness, we are, prescribing quite often both these drugs to the patient. So it's important for us to know when to prescribe and how to titrate the dosage. Thank you so much for taking out the time and being with us today. It was really informative and a very, very educative talk to me. Thank you, Jumana. It was wonderful having you with us.